A new report by the Washington Post paints an absolutely dystopic picture of what Donald Trump and his legions of fascist toadies plan to do if they get into the White House once again when it comes to migrants. Basically, deporting everyone in the most Germany in the 1930s and 40s-esque fashion that you can imagine. And the thing about it is, here's the report, by the way. You can see the Washington Post for further details in quotes. As inhuman as these plans are, and we're gonna break down all of the ways they are, they're not shying away from it. They're not denying any of it. In fact, they're proud of how industrial their anti-migrant deportation machine is going to be. A spokesperson for the campaign for Trump says, Americans can expect that immediately upon President Trump's return to the Oval Office, remember, dictator on day one, he will restore all of his prior policies, implement brand new crackdowns that will send shockwaves to all the world's criminal smugglers, as well as, like the 99.999% of migrants that are not smugglers, just regular people trying to survive. They'll get the shockwaves too. And marshal every federal and state power necessary to institute the largest deportation operation in American history. She added that undocumented immigrants, quote, should not get comfortable because very soon they'll be going home. Even if they've lived here for years or decades and have jobs and kids and social circles and this is their home. That's only true if you think of them as human beings. And clearly that is not something that Caroline Leavitt is hampered by. So let's break down some of the components of what they plan to actually do. But going into this, I do want you to bear in mind that some of you might be thinking, well, yeah, that sounds bad. But they said they were gonna do that the first time, and they weren't that bad the first time. First of all, what the hell are you talking about? It was really bad at the border the first time, but that's gonna be nothing according to them. His aides and allies say a second term in office would be more effective in operating the levers of the federal bureaucracy and less vulnerable to internal resistance, which is a great way of saying, like people who are career bureaucrats that don't believe that we should run our government as if it's supposed to be a massive machine for fascism. So during his term, Trump learned to install more officials at the Department of Homeland Security who would carry out his orders instead of trying to curb his impulses. We're not gonna have that anymore. The Trump campaign has also said that he would sign an executive order on his literal first day in office to withhold passports, social security numbers, and other government benefits from children of undocumented immigrants born in the United States, which is a complicated way of saying American citizens. He's going to do this executive order, just saying, oh yeah, you know how 10 years ago, Nazis would talk about how birthright citizenship shouldn't be a thing on the darkest corners of the internet? Day one executive order, that is US policy. We're gonna take all these American citizens and we're going to try to turn them through sheer will into second-class citizens. Francesca, there is more, but what do you think?
I just feel like how else is he gonna deport Eric, Don Jr. and Ivanka? I mean, he's got to deport the children of immigrants. It's a long con. I mean, it's the same way that Clarence Thomas is trying to, undo, interracial marriage. It's to get out of this marriage with Jeannie, but no, or Ginny, excuse me, sorry. Look, yeah, it is. This is a stark reminder of what re-electing Trump would look like. And I am now introduced to a new villain, Caroline Leavitt, because it really had a Stephen Miller vibes written all over it. But there we go. I am truly, I'm truly chilled and also more fascinated on how all of their friends in the business community, in meat processing plants, where are they going to get their workers? Who's going to do their underpaid labor? Are you going to pay a livable wage and accept a union for it? No, I've spoken to people who work on places like egg farms, right? You gotta get up at 5 in the morning. It's grueling, it's disgusting. It's a hard day's work. You cannot literally pay people enough or pay people anything that the market would allow for again, people who aren't immigrants to do these jobs. They're using child immigrant labor in meat processing plants right now. They're getting mangled in these machines. It's awful. And so the whole thing, again, this is bad, but it's just what do you think that does to an economy that rests on the work, the hard work of immigrants? And this is from a purely crass right-wing stance. That's mind you. So that, I guess that's my question to his followers and his supporters.
No, probably a lot of damage, but bear in mind that yes, many right-wingers might lose it all economically, but they will be able to sustain themselves in terms of shelter and food in knowing that migrants got screwed over. I guess that's something that'll fill your belly. But anyway, look, I get your concern about we have all these migrants, including children, who do these jobs. If we get rid of them, well, who's gonna do the work? I think they've already got an answer for that. Kids from America, that were born in America, I suppose.
Right.
Like, it's not a coincidence that they've been trying to lower the age that you can work in these places and that they're talking about raising the retirement age. They're trying in all ways to force you to do this job, all of these jobs. Even if the pay is terrible and there are no benefits, you're gonna be forced to do it one way or the other. So to all the conservatives who are like cheering like a hardworking Guatemalan family being deported, bear in mind, you're gonna be cut like making up for the slack of them, no longer being able to be here and work.
John, it's amazing that they're simultaneously doing that while also claiming like children's rights and like parental rights, like parental rights to send my kid to die, in a meat processing plant.
Yeah, well, they care about some rights. It's your 13-year-old daughter's right to work in a chicken processing plant and marry a 27-year-old right-wing incel. Absolutely. Those are the rights that they have and none others.
Yes.
So anyway, I want to talk about some more of the details because you invoked Stephen Miller. So you said it once, I said it once. No one say it a third time.
Nope.
But anyway, he's involved in this, obviously. He says, I don't care what the hell happens in this world. If President Trump gets reelected, the border's going to be sealed, the military will be deployed, the National Guard will be activated, and the illegals are going home. And he went on to describe large-scale raids that all of the actual like immigration officers that would have to do this say there's absolutely no way we could do what they're talking about. But bear in mind, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and he is substituting fundamental deep-seated racism for policy expertise. So that's sort of where the gap is. He talks about throughput facilities, like airports with military planes just constantly taking off. We're not putting these people on commercial airlines. We're packing them into military transport planes and just dropping them somewhere. That is what he is going on these shows to say. He suggested using National Guard troops, state police, and other federal law enforcement agencies as force multipliers, including sending National Guard troops from Republican-led states into neighboring states governed by Democrats.
Sure, buddy.
Seems like there could be potentially some issues with that. I don't think he's particularly worried about the fact that might lead to like shots being fired or anything. These people, like, they can't get through a masturbatory period without thinking about migrants being deported and a civil war breaking out here in America. And anyway, look, bear in mind, Donald Trump is supportive of all this. But it's gonna be people like Stephen Miller, these people who have fantasized since they were 12 years old and looked 45 that America would become the fascist state that would arbitrarily raise people like them up to a position of superiority versus everyone else. And Donald Trump is perfectly happy with the military being involved. According to a former senior administration official, he was obsessed with getting the military involved in all of this. But before you weigh in, Francesca, I do want you to bear in mind that at the same time that all this is going on, and Biden is saying some things that are good, including describing these reports as cheap politics as usual, he is also behind the scenes apparently mulling a plan that could restrict asylum claims at the border. So effectively taking some of those Trump era policies and bringing them back, either because he genuinely thinks that it would help or because he needs to be seen to be doing something on the border after the Republicans blocked that border security bill. And so Biden is like narrowing the gap between these two positions. He's not talking about setting up concentration camps on the border like these fascists are, but he is talking about changing policy in a right-wing direction. So what do you make of all this?
I mean, this has always been the problem with centrist Democrats when it comes to the border, is that their line is actually not many shades, different than the Republican line, which is, and if you give them an inch, if you take away the right to asylum, which Biden has done, if you continue Trump's policies, which Biden has done, then they're gonna want more. They're gonna wanna do more. They're gonna want, alligators and sharks in the Rio Grande River. Like that's literally where they will go. And here's why, is because they have this vision and they have a narrative, which is migrants are bringing fentanyl and stealing your jobs and also voting. They're doing a lot. Now they're doing none of those things. Remember, a lot of the fentanyl, most of the fentanyl in this country is produced inside the US. But beyond that, there needs to be an actual narrative that Democrats articulate, and they are too chicken, you know what, to actually do it. What's that narrative? That 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country contribute deeply, not just to the economy, but to their communities, to our cultural fabric, period, end of story. That people should be treated like human beings, that we don't want to compete with the cartels and say, we're gonna be bigger, badder, scarier than the cartels, which is effectively what US border policy has been up until this point. That we want to expedite people. We want to have many more judges and attorneys hired to be able to process people through their either legitimate asylum claims or decide whether they're legitimate. We want to build that out. We will not detain people indeterminately. If we pass a law like DACA, we will honor it. We will create a pathway to citizenship. You need to stop the bleeding. You need to actually address the crisis, right?
Yeah.
Not just say we're going to build a higher, or like you want to build like a 50-foot wall, we're going to build like a 28-foot wall. And isn't it compromise? It's so pathetic to me, John, consistently. And we always lose focus of how these are people, they're our neighbors, they're our parents, they're our families.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, what you're saying about the need to hire people like this, for instance, if you're gonna try to, adjudicate all these really quickly, you'd need to do that. So you're saying that, and coincidentally, so is like Border Patrol and INS and all the people that actually do the work. They said, we don't need that. That's just DEI jobs. And so some of you might think, well, but then how are you gonna deport like 11 million people if you don't have the judges and all that? Well, if you just don't have due process. That's how you would do that. If you don't consider them to be people who are deserving of rights and that you need to abide by the law, if you just think of them as human refuse that you can pack into a C-130 and then just go somewhere in South America and drop them off, then that works mentally for you. In that case, Stephen Miller, I continue to think that Brett was onto something when he said that Stephen Miller was in high school and a Mexican dude slept with his girlfriend, and that just ruined everything for everybody. I think that he's
I said someone called him a pinche gringo, and like but it was definitely
it could be both.
It's in high school,
both.
Or like his like Salvadoran nanny, because he had one, didn't cut the crust off his PB&J, and then he was like, "I'm deporting your family."
I think the guy slept with his girlfriend, and when he confronted her, she called him a pinche gringo in a terrible accent. The whole thing's bad, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyway, as a result of that, we have to become a fascist state. Thanks a lot.